The wealthy tech mogul's 4-year-old son had never taken a single step until an unexpected act of kindness from an unlikely person rewrote their family's story. If you've ever faced what seemed like an impossible challenge, let this be your reminder: miracles often hide in plain sight. The Bennett estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, echoed with the sound of frustrated tears. Little Ethan Bennett lay crumpled on the imported marble floor, his tiny fingers clawing at the surface as he struggled to drag himself toward his favorite toy truck. His legs, weakened by a rare neuromuscular disorder, refused to cooperate. "I just wanted to drive it," he sobbed, his voice shattering his parents' hearts all over again. At 42, James Bennett was the CEO of a billion-dollar AI startup, a man who'd built his empire solving impossible problems. Yet here he stood powerless before his son's suffering. His wife, Claire, knelt beside them, her designer dress wrinkled from nights spent researching experimental treatments. They'd flown to specialists in Zurich, Tokyo, even a cutting-edge clinic in Boston, all to hear the same devastating verdict: "There's nothing more we can do." Enter Sophia Mendez. The Bennett's housekeeper of 7 years moved through their 12,000-square-foot mansion like a ghost polishing silver and folding laundry with quiet precision. To them, she was simply the help. To Ethan, she was the woman who sang Spanish lullabies while cleaning his room and slipped him pan dulce when his parents weren't looking. That evening, as James scrolled through yet another futile medical study, Sophia paused in the doorway. "Señor," she said softly, "my brother in Miami, he had polio as a boy. There's an old exercise my abuela taught him." James nearly dismissed her. What could a cleaner know that Ivy League doctors didn't? But the desperation in Claire's eyes stopped him. "Please," Claire whispered, "show us." What happened next defied logic. Using nothing but a rolled-up towel and a series of gentle stretches, Sophia guided Ethan through movements no physical therapist had ever tried. "You're my valiente," she murmured as he gripped her calloused hands. And then, like a flower pushing through concrete, Ethan's left foot twitched. The Bennetts gasped, but Sophia just smiled, her eyes glistening. "Sometimes," she said, wiping flour from her apron, "God puts angels in the unlikeliest places." That night, for the first time in 4 years, hope walked back into their lives on the strong, humble shoulders of a woman they'd almost overlooked. Because real transformation, it doesn't always come with a medical degree or a $1 million price tag. Sometimes it arrives in a cleaning cart carrying generations of wisdom and the quiet courage to speak up. Dr. Mitchell's words still hung in the air like a death sentence. James Bennett clenched his fists, his knuckles white. "Adaptive strategies," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "You want my son to spend his life in a wheelchair when we haven't tried everything." Claire placed a trembling hand on his arm, but he barely felt it. Across the room, their daughter Lily quietly shut her bedroom door, the click echoing like a verdict. That night, the mansion felt more like a tomb. James paced his home office, staring at the framed Time magazine cover that hailed him as the disruptor, the man who'd revolutionized AI while the world laughed. Now irony tasted bitter. His fortune could buy anything except the one thing that mattered. Down the hall, Claire sat vigil beside Ethan's bed, tracing the scars from countless failed treatments on his tiny legs. Then came the sound no one expected: laughter. Claire followed it to the kitchen, where she froze in the doorway. Sophia had Ethan perched on the counter, his legs dangling as she kneaded dough. "Now, mi corazón," Sophia murmured, pressing his small hands into the floury mound. "Feel how it moves like the ocean." Ethan giggled as she guided his fingers, his face alight with a joy Claire hadn't seen in months. "You're baking," Claire whispered. Sophia didn't look up. "In my village we say stubborn dough needs stubborn hands." She lifted Ethan down, and for one breathtaking second, his toes brushed the floor. Claire's gasp startled them both. Sophia met her gaze unflinching. "The doctors don't know everything, Señora." The next morning, James stormed into the kitchen to find his son standing. Not walking, but standing, gripping Sophia's shoulders with white-knuckled determination. "Daddy," Ethan beamed. "Look, I'm tall." James's coffee mug shattered on the tiles, but the real twist came at sunset. Sophia led them to the garden where she'd strung a makeshift harness from an old hammock. My abuelo used this for the horses, she said, securing it around Ethan's waist. Now, valiente fly. With Sophia spotting him, Ethan took his first real step, then another. Claire sobbed into her hands as James fell to his knees. Across the lawn, unnoticed by the celebrating family, Sophia crossed herself. She hadn't mentioned the other reason she recognized Ethan's condition. Her brother hadn't just survived polio, he'd won Olympic gold. Some miracles, it seemed, were generational. Claire stood frozen in the hallway, her phone call with the Swiss specialist forgotten. Through the cracked door of the sunroom, she watched as Sophia knelt beside Ethan, her hands steady as she massaged his small legs with an oil that smelled of citrus and herbs. This is what my abuela used when the horses couldn't stand, Sophia murmured. Their legs were weak too, but strong hearts made them run again. Ethan wrinkled his nose. I'm not a horse. Sophia's laughter filled the room. Know me, soul. You're much braver. She guided his hands to his own thighs. Feel that that's your power waiting to wake up. To Claire's astonishment, Ethan's fingers curled against his skin with newfound focus. The real breakthrough came an hour later. While Sophia folded laundry, Ethan dragged himself across the floor toward his abandoned walker, not with the defeated crawl Claire had seen 1,000 times, but with the grim determination of a soldier. When his fingers closed around the metal frame, Sophia didn't rush to help. She simply said, Your abuelo would be proud. Then the impossible happened. With a guttural cry that startled a maid 3 rooms away, Ethan pulled himself upright. The walker shook violently but held. Across the room, Sophia's rosary beads slipped from her fingers as Claire burst through the door, her scream of joy echoing through the house. But the miracle wasn't done yet. As Claire reached for her phone to call James, Sophia caught her wrist. Wait, she whispered, pointing. Ethan's left foot, the one doctor said would never bear weight, twitched forward. 1 inch, then 2. The walker screeched across the hardwood as he took his first unaided step since infancy. In that moment, 3 things became clear. The oil wasn't just citrus and herbs. Sophia wasn't just a housekeeper. And Ethan, his face alight with triumph, wasn't just walking. He was flying. Later, when the doctors demanded explanations, James would lie about experimental treatments. Only Claire noticed the faded tattoo on Sophia's wrist, the same symbol used by a legendary Cuban physiotherapist who disappeared decades ago. Some angels, it seemed, wore rubber gloves and carried mops. Sarah's scream sliced through the house like a siren. She scrambled down the steps, her designer heels slipping on the tile as she grabbed Lucas, inspecting every inch of him for injuries. Mama, I'm okay, Lucas insisted, but his eyes never left Maria. There was something new in his gaze, not fear, but awe. Maria rose slowly, wincing as she put weight on her left ankle. Senora Bennett, I'm so sorry. No. Lucas interrupted with unexpected force. He wriggled free from Sarah's grip and crawled toward Maria, his small hands gripping her uniform pants. She saved me, Mama, like a superhero. Sarah's anger faltered as she took in Maria's swollen ankle the way she favored her right side. Then she noticed the toy car still clutched in Lucas's fist, the same red Corvette he'd been begging to play with for weeks. A realization dawned. This wasn't negligence. This was a little boy being a little boy. That night, as William examined Maria's injuries in the kitchen, his pre-med degree finally useful, Lucas sat cross-legged on the counter, a position the doctors said he'd never achieve. Show me again, he demanded, as Maria rotated her aching wrist. William's stethoscope slipped. Lucas, that's enough. No, it's okay, Maria said softly. She stood testing her weight on the ankle, then suddenly spun into a fluid dance step, the same move she'd used to catch him. Lucas gasped as her body arced through the air like poetry in motion. Before I cleaned houses, Maria confessed, rolling up her sleeve to reveal a faded tattoo of dancing flames. I was a gymnast in Cuba, national team. The room went still. But when Miguel was born, some dreams change. Lucas's small hand touched the tattoo. Can you teach me to fly? The question hung in the air like a promise. Across the room, Sarah met William's eyes. They'd spent millions on cutting-edge treatments, never imagining the answer might lie in a housekeeper's muscle memory. Maria hesitated only a moment before nodding. "We start tomorrow. But first..." She plucked the toy car from Lucas's grip and placed it on the far counter. "This is your finish line." Then, with tears in her eyes, she whispered the words that would change everything. "Your legs aren't broken, Corazon. They're just sleeping, and it's time to wake them up." In the doorway, unnoticed, 10-year-old Emma pressed her hands over her mouth. She'd seen Maria's gymnastics videos online last week while researching cool moves for kids in wheelchairs. Some secrets, it seemed, were meant to be discovered. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the edge of a monogrammed towel. "Lucas hasn't stopped talking about you. He says he wants you to teach him how to move like you did." Maria's hand stilled on the stack of sheets. "Senora, I'm just a cleaner." "And a former Olympian," Sarah interrupted softly. Maria's head snapped up. "I saw the tattoo. The way you caught him, that wasn't just reflex. That was training." A shadow crossed Maria's face as she unconsciously rubbed the faded rings of old muscle tears in her shoulder. "That life is gone. The regime, when I spoke out about their treatment of athletes." Her voice trailed off heavy with unspoken history. Sarah reached out, surprising them both. "What if it's not gone? What if it could help my son?" Downstairs, Lucas sat in his wheelchair, staring at his legs with newfound focus. "Come on," he whispered, gripping his thighs. "Maria cares about me. That's your reason." His toes twitched just once, but it was enough to make his breath catch. The real turning point came that afternoon. Maria found Lucas in the playroom, attempting to pull himself onto the couch, using only his arms, his face red with effort. Without a word, she knelt beside him and placed his small hands on her forearms. "Feel that, Guerrero? That's fire. That's what moves mountains." As Lucas's fingers pressed into her corded muscles, Maria began to hum the same lullaby from yesterday, but slower, deeper. Suddenly she guided his hands downward in a fluid motion, tracing the path of nerves from his spine to his toes. "This is the river," she murmured. "And your thoughts. They're the rain that makes it flow." From the doorway, William watched in stunned silence as his son's left foot jerked, not a spasm but a deliberate movement, following Maria's hands like a compass finding north. That night, the Bennett family gathered around the dinner table in rare silence, until Emma blurted out what they were all thinking. "We need to get Maria better shoes." When everyone turned, she shrugged. "If she's going to train Lucas, she can't do it in those old sneakers." Maria's laughter mingled with theirs, but the true miracle came after dessert. As she rose to clear the plates, Lucas grabbed his walker and stood. Not perfectly, not for long, but when his eyes met Maria's across the table, the unspoken truth passed between them. Some victories aren't won in stadiums. They're won in dining rooms with sauce-stained napkins and the quiet courage of those who've learned to fly after their wings were clipped. And as Maria helped Lucas take his first unassisted step toward the kitchen, she realized something too. Sometimes redemption doesn't come when we're ready for it. It comes when someone else needs us to be ready for them. The autumn leaves crunched underfoot as Maria arrived early one Saturday morning carrying a worn leather bag instead of her usual cleaning supplies. Lucas was already waiting at the door, his tiny fingers pressed against the glass in anticipation. "Today we train like warriors," Maria announced, kneeling to meet his eager gaze. From the bag, she produced 2 red bandanas, identical to the one she'd worn during her competitive days. Sarah watched from the stairs as Maria tied one around Lucas's forehead, the fabric swallowing his small face. "This is your fire, Guerrero," Maria whispered, adjusting the knot. "When you feel it slipping, remember the body follows where the mind leads." What happened next defied every medical report. Maria had transformed the Bennett's sprawling backyard into an obstacle course of pillows, hula hoops, and strategically placed toys. "Reach for Miguel's dinosaur," she commanded as Lucas' army crawled across the grass. When his arms trembled with exhaustion, Maria didn't coddle him. She dropped to the ground beside him, her bad knee protesting, and matched him crawl for crawl. "Your turn to lead, Capitan," she panted, letting the 4-year-old set their pace. By the 3rd lap, Lucas's movements became fluid, not the desperate dragging of before, but a rhythmic push-pull that carried purpose. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, when without prompting, Lucas used a garden chair to pull himself upright. His legs shook like newborn colts but held. William arrived home just in time to see his son take 3 wobbling steps toward Maria before collapsing into her arms. The sound that tore from Lucas's throat wasn't a cry of pain, but of triumph, a warrior's yell that sent birds scattering from the trees. That night, as Maria massaged Lucas's sore muscles with arnica oil, the same treatment she'd used on her Olympic teammates, William pulled her aside. "We need to talk about your salary." Maria stiffened. "Senor, I don't expect—" "Not as housekeeper." William interrupted, his voice thick. "As Lucas's therapist. Full benefits, your own gym space, whatever equipment you need." The silence stretched as Maria absorbed the offer. Outside, the wind carried the scent of burning leaves, a childhood memory from Havana she thought she'd forgotten. When she finally spoke, her words surprised them both. "On one condition. We include others like Lucas, children the system has given up on." The Bennetts exchanged a glance. In that moment, they weren't tech moguls or society figures, just parents witnessing something miraculous. Sarah reached for Maria's hand, the calluses rough against her manicured fingers. "We'll build it together." As October's golden light faded, 3 unbreakable bonds were forged between a boy and his unlikely coach, between employers and employee, between what medicine said was impossible and what love proved possible every day. And in the center of it all stood Lucas, his red bandana now a crown, dreaming of the day he'd run not walk to Maria's open arms. The crisp October air carried the scent of fallen leaves through the Bennett mansion as Lucas gripped the banister with white-knuckled determination. Maria knelt 2 steps below him, her hands hovering like spotter's bars at a gymnastics meet. "Higher, Guerrero," she urged. "The fire truck waits for a hero." Lucas's entire body trembled as he pulled himself upright again, his knees locking for 3 precious seconds before buckling. But this time, Maria didn't let him fall. Her hands caught him under the arms, suspending him in midair like a marionette discovering its strings. "Feel that?" she whispered. "Your legs remember what to do." Across the foyer, unnoticed by either of them, Jennifer Walker stood frozen, her clinical notepad slipping from her fingers. The boy she'd assessed as having permanent lower extremity dysfunction was now bearing 70% of his weight, unaided. The real miracle happened at dinner. As William carved the roast, Lucas suddenly pushed back from the table. "I want to sit next to Maria tonight." Before anyone could react, he swung his legs out and with a grunt that shook the chandelier stood. 5 seconds. 10. The grandfather clock in the hall marked 15 seconds before his knees gave out. But the eruption of joy that followed could have woken the dead. Emma screamed so loud the dog started barking. William's wine glass shattered on the floor. Sarah fell to her knees, weeping into her napkin. Only Maria remained calm, catching Lucas as he tumbled forward. But when she pressed a kiss to his sweaty forehead, the tears in her eyes betrayed her. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we learn to fall, then to fly." That night, as Jennifer revised Lucas's treatment plan, she added 2 words in bold at the top: "Miracle in progress." Downstairs, William found Maria polishing silver in the butler's pantry. Without a word, he placed an envelope beside her. Inside, a check with enough zeros to send Miguel to any college in the world, and a deed to a small storefront in town. Maria looked up confused. William's voice broke. "For your clinic. For the other children." Outside, the autumn wind howled through the trees, carrying away the last of their doubts. Somewhere between Maria's stubborn hope and Lucas's unshakable faith, the impossible had become inevitable. And in the morning, when Lucas stood again, this time for 23 seconds, no one called it a miracle anymore. They called it Tuesday. The morning of Thanksgiving dawned with an unseasonable warmth, the kind that makes you believe in miracles. Lucas stood gripping his walker in the foyer, his tiny fingers white with tension as the doorbell rang. "Remember," Maria whispered, adjusting the red bandana around his forehead. "Strong like the river, steady like the mountain." The door swung open to reveal Grandma Bennett holding a pumpkin pie. Lucas took one deep breath, then let go of the walker. For 3 staggering steps, the entire world held its breath. He crashed into his grandmother's legs just as the pie went flying, smearing whipped cream across the marble like a victory banner. The stunned silence lasted only a heartbeat before Cousin Jake yelled, "Dude, you're like Baby Groot," sending the room into hysterics. That night, as the family gathered around the ruined but perfect pie, William raised his glass. To Maria, who taught us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from letting others believe in you. Maria shook her head, lifting Lucas onto her lap. No, senor. To Lucas, who taught this old gymnast that gold medals aren't always made of metal. As the fire crackled, no one noticed Dr. Mitchell quietly pocketing his prescription pad. Some cures, it seemed, couldn't be bottled, only earned through stubborn love and the courage to stand when the whole world expects you to fall. And when Lucas fell asleep that night, his legs twitched in rhythm with Maria's lullaby, two dancers finally hearing the same music. The moment the pumpkin pie was served, Lucas tugged at Maria's sleeve. Can we show them now? His whisper carried across the suddenly quiet table. Miguel caught his mother's eye, a silent conversation passing between them. Then, without a word, the young engineer pushed back his chair and knelt beside Lucas's wheelchair. Let's do this together, hermanito. What happened next would become family legend. With Miguel supporting his torso and Maria guiding his legs, Lucas rose from his chair like a phoenix from ashes. The room erupted. Grandma Bennett dropped her fork. Cousin Jake's phone recorded vertically. Emma screamed, "Do a kick!" But Lucas heard only Maria's voice. One step for courage, Guerrero. His left foot slid forward, then his right. 3 unassisted steps later, he collapsed into Miguel's arms, the entire Bennett clan on their feet cheering. Even stoic William was openly weeping into the turkey carcass. As the chaos subsided, Dr. Mitchell, who Sarah had secretly invited, cleared his throat. I believe, he said, adjusting his glasses, we need to discuss revising Lucas's diagnosis. But the real revelation came when Miguel pulled a small device from his pocket, a prototype neural stimulator he'd been developing in his dorm room. It's based on Mom's old gymnastics training, he explained, showing Lucas the glowing interface. Your legs just needed the right music to dance to. Maria looked at her son, then at Lucas, then at the Bennett family surrounding them with tear-streaked faces. In that moment, she understood the true meaning of Thanksgiving, not just gratitude for what you have, but for who finds you when you're lost. And as Lucas fell asleep that night, his head pillowed on Miguel's shoulder and his feet twitching to some inner rhythm, the housekeeper's son whispered 2 words that would shape their future. Clinical trials. The end. Or rather, the beginning. The hum of the washing machine filled the silence as William hesitated in the doorway. Maria looked up, her hands stilling on a tiny pair of Lucas's jeans, now grass-stained from his daily practice sessions. Senor Bennett, William cleared his throat. I've been reviewing your contract. He placed a folder on the folding table. It's outdated. Maria's shoulders tensed as she opened it. Inside, she found not just a raise, but stock options in Nextech, and most surprising, a proposal for the Rodriguez Center for Neuromuscular Innovation, with her as director and Miguel heading research. This is too much, Maria breathed, tracing the architectural renderings. William shook his head. It's not enough. He pulled a worn photo from his wallet, a younger Lucas in leg braces, his eyes dull with resignation. You didn't just teach my son to walk, Maria. You taught him to fight. How many other kids deserve that chance? Down the hall, the sound of small feet thudded unevenly against hardwood. Lucas appeared in the doorway, his walker abandoned, gripping the walls for balance. Maria, look, I walked all the way from the... He toppled forward. Maria caught him instinctively, but not before noticing what William now saw too. Lucas hadn't stumbled. He'd been running. As the boy babbled excitedly about his feat, William met Maria's gaze over his head. In that moment, the unspoken agreement passed between them. This wasn't an ending. It was a spark. The next morning, construction began on converting the Bennett's guest house into a clinic. By Christmas, they'd have their first patient, a little girl whose parents had driven 3 states after seeing Lucas's Thanksgiving video go viral. And on New Year's Eve, as fireworks painted the sky, Maria would stand between her son and her once patient, watching Lucas teach the girl his favorite word, possible. Some stories don't have endings. They have legacies. William's fingers tapped against his knee, the rhythm matching the snowflakes swirling outside. Sarah, he said slowly, what if we built something that combined Maria's methods with Miguel's technology? Sarah's phone slipped from her hands. On the screen, a video played of Lucas taking 3 wobbling steps toward Maria, his face alight with triumph. The next morning, William arrived at Maria's tiny apartment, unannounced snow dusting his coat shoulders. Miguel answered the door, blinking at the billionaire on their threshold, holding 2 steaming coffee cups and a rolled-up blueprint. "Your research lab," William said, thrusting the plans into Miguel's hands. "Fully funded. On one condition, we call it the Rodriguez method." Maria appeared behind her son, her hair wrapped in a towel, eyes widening at the rendering a state-of-the-art facility, with her name in bold letters. "Mr. Bennett, I can't accept." "You already did," William interrupted. "The day you caught my son." He pulled out his phone showing security footage from months earlier, Maria's Olympic-worthy dive to save Lucas, her body twisting midair with impossible grace. "We've been analyzing your movements. That reflex, it's not just training. It's neurological genius." Miguel's jaw dropped. "Mama, your proprioception studies..." The coffee cups shook in William's hands. "Combine your son's tech with your instincts and we won't just help Lucas. We'll rewrite the book on mobility disorders." Back at the mansion, Lucas sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor. A pose doctor said he'd never achieve, assembling a Lego replica of Tia Maria's clinic while humming her lullaby. Downstairs, Emma drafted fundraising plans, her piggy bank emptied onto the kitchen table. And in a cramped apartment across town, 2 Rodriguez generations bent over blueprints, their shadows stretching long against the wall, one shaped by sacrifice, the other by science, both united by a little boy's first steps. The snow fell harder now, blanketing the city in quiet anticipation. Somewhere between Maria's weathered hands, tracing equipment lists, and Miguel's excited coding notes, a revolution was being born, not in a gleaming lab, but at the intersection of hope and hustle. By spring, the first patients would arrive. By summer, the studies would publish. And by the time Lucas started kindergarten, impossible would just be a word in a story about how things used to be. William slid a check across his mahogany desk with enough zeros to make Miguel's scholarship look like pocket change. "This isn't charity," he said, tapping the paper. "It's an investment in the future of movement." Miguel's fingers trembled as he picked it up, then suddenly set it down. "There's something you should know." He pulled out his phone showing footage of Maria in their tiny apartment kitchen, guiding Lucas through what looked like ballet positions. "Mama's been adapting Cuban gymnastic recovery techniques. The way she's rewiring his neural pathways, it's revolutionary." William's breath caught. On screen, Lucas balanced on one foot for 8 seconds, a feat his doctors swore he'd never achieve. "We don't need years," Miguel continued, eyes blazing. "Combine my exoskeleton with her methods, and we could have working prototypes by summer." Just then the office door burst open. Lucas stood panting in the doorway, his small fists clenched in triumph. 5 steps, he announced. "All by myself." The 2 men froze as the boy demonstrated left foot, left again, each movement steadier than the last. When he wobbled, Miguel instinctively reached out, but William caught his arm. "Let him fall." Lucas stumbled, caught himself on the desk, and beamed up at them. "I got back up!" In that moment, the Foundation's mission crystallized, not to erase limitations, but to make them irrelevant. By New Year's Eve, the Rodriguez Bennett Institute for Movement Innovation had its first board meeting, chaired by a 9-year-old Emma, wielding color-coded charts and attended via video call by Dr. Mitchell, who'd resigned from his hospital position to join them. As the clock struck midnight, Maria stood between her son and her once patient, watching fireworks reflect in the skyscraper windows. Behind them, the first prototype exoskeleton gleamed on a stand, its delicate framework modeled after the very muscles now flexing in Lucas's legs as he danced. Some revolutions begin with a bang. This one began with a step. Sarah found herself standing outside Maria's tiny apartment that night, snow melting in her hair as she hesitated before knocking. The door opened to reveal Maria still in her uniform, Miguel's research papers spread across their kitchen table. "Senora Bennett," Maria's brow furrowed. "Is Lucas okay?" Sarah held out a worn baby book, its pages filled with notes of failed therapies. "I need you to teach me how to reach him." The confession hung between them, a mother's surrender wrapped in a plea. Maria stepped aside, gesturing to the single chair not covered in blueprints. "We start with listening," she said simply. "Not to his words, but to what his body whispers." That night, 2 mothers sat knee to knee in a dim kitchen, one tracing the scars of her past on the tabletop, the other learning to read her son's silent language. By dawn, Sarah had traded her designer heels for sneakers, her perfectly manicured hands now calloused from practicing Maria's massage techniques on oranges. "So you learn pressure before touching Lucas." When Lucas woke to find his mother waiting with his walker, her hair messy, her smile real, he blinked in surprise. "Mama, you look different." Sarah knelt, meeting him eye to eye, just as Maria had taught her. "Today we fall together, mi guerrero." The unfamiliar Spanish phrase rolled awkwardly off her tongue, but Lucas's answering grin could have powered the city. As they practiced in the morning light, William watched from the doorway, his phone buzzing with Miguel's text. "Mama says yes, but she has conditions." The attachment showed Maria's handwritten list. No plush offices, no salary increases, just 3 demands. 1. First clinic opens in the Bronx, where kids need it most. 2. Therapy remains free for families who can't pay. 3. Lucas gets to name the first exoskeleton prototype. Snowflakes swirled outside as William typed his reply, "Deal." Then he added a 4th term of his own, one that would arrive via courier that afternoon in a long velvet box. Inside, nestled beside Maria's original house key, sat a new brass key engraved with 2 words, "Medical Director." Some partnerships begin with contracts. This one began with oranges and overdue honesty. And as Sarah helped Lucas stand after his 7th fall that morning, she finally understood what Maria had known. All along, real healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from showing up again and again with your sleeves rolled up and your pride left at the door. The Christmas Eve snowfall painted the Bennett estate in hushed white when Lucas made his discovery. Tucked behind the towering tree, a long, narrow package bore his name in Miguel's precise handwriting. "Open it!" Miguel urged, his eyes gleaming behind thick-framed glasses. The wrapping fell away to reveal a sleek, carbon fiber frame, half exoskeleton, half superhero armor with Skywalker etched along the side in Lucas's own blocky handwriting. "Try it on Hermanito," Maria whispered, helping secure the straps. William held his breath as Lucas took his first tentative step. Then another. The device whirred softly, amplifying each movement like a gentle hand beneath his knees. "I can feel the snow!" Lucas shrieked, bolting for the French doors. The family scrambled after him, Sarah barely grabbing her phone in time to film as her son, her miracle, charged into the moonlit garden. Not walking, running. Emma whooped, chasing after him with mittens flying. William clung to Sarah, both trembling as Lucas carved wild loops through fresh powder, his laughter ringing through the cold. Maria crossed herself, watching Miguel adjust the prototype settings via tablet. "You built this in 3 weeks," William breathed. Miguel's smile was all Maria. "We Rodriguez women work fast under pressure." Later, when Lucas collapsed, happily exhausted by the fire, his legs still encased in gleaming metal, Sarah finally understood what true adaptation looked like. Not resignation to limits, but the courage to redefine them. As midnight approached, the family gathered around the piano. Lucas stood between his parents, one small hand on the exoskeleton's control panel, the other clutching Maria's. And when the first notes of Silent Night filled the room, it was Maria who noticed Lucas wasn't just singing. His toes, once lifeless, now tapped in perfect rhythm beneath the metallic frame. Some gifts can't be wrapped. Some miracles don't need snow to fall. And some Christmas Eves become the day a family learned that walking was never the dream, flying was. Maria's training kicked in before anyone could speak. She had the first aid kit open and Lucas's snow-soaked pants rolled up before William could lay him on the couch. The boy's ankle already bloomed purple, his breath coming in sharp hiccups. "Tell me where it hurts, Guerrero." Maria murmured, her fingers tracing the swelling with clinical precision. Lucas whimpered, "I wanted to walk to the mailbox, like Emma." Sarah hovered helplessly, her medical degree useless against her son's pain. Then she noticed Maria's hands, not just assessing, but pressing specific points that made Lucas's tears slow. "You're doing acupressure," Sarah realized aloud. Maria didn't look up. "In Cuba, we treat sprains first with touch, then with ice." She guided Lucas's hand to his own ankle. "Feel that corazon? The heat is your body working. Now tell it where to go." As Lucas focused, Maria caught Sarah's eye, a silent invitation. Hesitantly, Sarah knelt beside them, mirroring Maria's movements on the uninjured side. "Like this," she whispered. Maria nodded, adjusting Sarah's fingers. "Exactly. The body listens to a mother's hands best." The moment shattered when Dr. Mitchell arrived, but not before William captured a photo, 3 generations of healers bent over one small ankle, their shadows merging on the wall. That night, as the household slept, Maria sat at the staff table reviewing the foundation blueprints when a mug of tea appeared beside her. Sarah slid into the opposite chair, her own hands wrapped around a matching mug. "I owe you an apology," Sarah began. I let jealousy blind me to what you've given Lucas. Maria stirred honey into her tea. No explanations needed, Senora. A mother's heart has its own compass. Sarah pushed an envelope across the table. Inside gleamed a medical school acceptance letter for Maria. Full scholarship. Night classes. You diagnosed Lucas when 7 specialists failed, Sarah said softly. The world needs your hands. Outside, the ice storm raged on. But in that warm kitchen, 2 mothers forged a new understanding, not as staff and employer, but as co-conspirators in the quiet revolution of healing. And upstairs, Lucas slept soundly, his injured foot twitching in rhythm with some dream of running. The turtle sat on Lucas's nightstand for 3 days before the miracle happened. On the 4th morning, Sarah found her son sitting up in bed, turning the wooden figure in his hands with a look of quiet determination. "Can we make a turtle cast, Mama?" he asked suddenly. By noon, Dr. Mitchell arrived with green fiberglass, transforming Lucas's plain white cast into a gleaming turtle shell. Emma painted Speedy along the side in neon pink, while Miguel rigged a special platform so Lucas could still use his exoskeleton on the uninjured leg. But the real breakthrough came that evening. Maria walked in to find Lucas balanced precariously on one foot, his turtle cast hovering just above the floor as he gripped his walker. "Watch this, Tia," he shouted and took a hop. Not a step, a hop. Sarah dropped the laundry basket. William's coffee cup shattered. And Maria. She crossed the room in 3 strides and caught Lucas mid-air on his second bounce, spinning him around until they both collapsed laughing onto the rug. "You're right, Guerrero," Maria gasped between laughs. "Turtles don't hop." Lucas grinned up at her, his eyes alight again. "This one does." The next morning, Jennifer arrived to find Lucas training with Emma, both wearing turtle shells made from overturned laundry baskets, hopping through an obstacle course of pillows. "New therapy protocol," Jen asked, eyebrows raised. Sarah handed her a coffee, smiling at the chaos. "Call it the Rodriguez Method 2.0. By Valentine's Day, Lucas's cast would come off to reveal muscles stronger than before, his upper body honed from weeks of hopping, his spirit unbroken. And when he took his first tentative steps without the walker, there would be no fanfare. Just a small wooden turtle in his pocket and a house full of people finally understanding what Maria had known all along. Healing isn't about going fast or far. It's about carrying your why with you every hop, skip, and stumble of the way. Maria perched on the edge of the chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, as William tapped his tablet. The screen flickered to life, projecting blueprints across the wall, a sleek, glass-fronted building with the Turtle Center emblazoned above the entrance. Lucas gasped. "It's my turtle." Sarah smiled, squeezing his shoulders. "Not just yours, baby, for all kids who need to go slow, but sure." William turned to Maria. "We want you to design the therapy program. Full salary, benefits, your own office next to Miguel's lab." Maria's fingers tightened around the wooden turtle in her pocket. "Mr. Bennett, I have no degrees." "You have this," Emma interrupted, pulling up a video on her phone, Maria guiding Lucas through his first steps, her hands sure and steady. "That's worth 1,000 diplomas." A silence fell as Maria studied the blueprints. Then, to everyone's surprise, she shook her head. "I'll accept on 3 conditions." She held up fingers. 1. We keep my cleaning shifts until the center opens. 2. We include families in every therapy session. Her third finger rose. And 3. Lucas gets to place the first brick. The room erupted. Lucas whooped so loud the dog started barking. Miguel fist-pumped the air. Even stoic Dr. Mitchell, joining via video call, blinked away tears. Only Sarah noticed Maria slip out during the celebration. She found her in the kitchen, scrubbing an already clean countertop with fierce concentration. "You're allowed to be happy, you know," Sarah said gently. Maria's shoulders trembled. "In my country, women like me don't get offices. We don't have our names on buildings." Sarah placed a hand over Maria's, stilling her frantic motions. "In this country, you do." She turned Maria's palm upward, revealing the calluses and scars of a life spent serving. "These hands built miracles before anyone gave you blueprints." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, persistent. Like turtles. Like determined little boys. Like housekeepers turned healers who move mountains one humble step at a time. And in the living room, Lucas carefully placed his wooden turtle atop the architectural plans, right where the reception desk would be. B.M. Miguel set down his engineering textbook with a thud. "Mama, this is everything we've dreamed of. Why hesitate?" Maria turned the wooden turtle in her hands, its shell worn smooth from years of worry. "What if I fail these children?" In our kitchen with Lucas, it was simple. but a whole center. Miguel knelt before her, his hands so like his father's covering hers. "Remember what abuelo carved." He flipped the turtle over, revealing the words "lento pero seguro." The next morning, Maria arrived at the Bennett estate with 2 mugs of café de olla and a proposal. She found Sarah reviewing blueprints in the breakfast nook. "I'll accept," Maria said, sliding a handwritten page across the table. "But the program must be called Tortuga Valiente Brave Turtle." Sarah scanned the document, not a resume, but a manifesto. No sterile therapy rooms. Instead, communal kitchens where families cooked together while practicing balance. Gardens where children dug in the soil to strengthen grip. Music-filled gyms where rhythm, not repetition, guided movement. "And this," Sarah pointed to the final item. Maria's eyes shone. "Every Friday, Caídas Felices, Happy Falls. Children celebrate mistakes with confetti and cheers." William appeared in the doorway, his tie still loose from sleep. "You realize this upends every therapy model in existence." Maria handed him the second mug. "Mr. Bennett, when has your family ever followed the rules?" By noon, the blueprints were revised. The sterile reception area became an abuela-style kitchen. The clinical gym transformed into a jungle-themed playground, and in the center, a mosaic turtle, its shell made from broken ceramic tiles donated by families. Lucas contributed the first piece, a shard from his favorite dinosaur mug shattered during his worst fall. As the contractors began work, Maria kept one foot in both worlds, mopping Bennett floors by morning, designing therapy protocols by afternoon. The rhythm felt right, this dance between who she'd been and who she was becoming. And when the first Tortuga Valiente participants arrived months later, they'd find not a clinic, but a home where every scuffed knee told a story, every wobble was met with applause, and the walls themselves whispered, "Slow is just steady in disguise." William's voice broke as Lucas suddenly let go of his walker and took 3 wobbling steps toward Maria. His tiny hands outstretched, his face alight with determination. The crowd gasped, but Maria stood perfectly still, letting him bridge the final distance on his own. When his small fingers finally grasped hers, the garden erupted in applause. Lucas turned, beaming at the other children in wheelchairs. "Your turn next," he announced. Then came the moment no one expected. Miguel wheeled forward a cart bearing 5 small exoskeletons, each customized with animal motifs: a turtle for Mateo, a dolphin for Sophia, a lion cub for Elijah. "And this," Miguel said, helping a wide-eyed girl strap on butterfly-winged braces, "is the Mariposa model for our late bloomers." As the children took their first assisted steps, tentative, triumphant, Sarah noticed Maria wiping her eyes. She slipped an arm around her friend's shoulders. "Look what you started." Maria shook her head, watching Lucas demonstrate turtle hops to his new friends. "No, señora. Look what we built." The press would call it a medical breakthrough. Donors would praise the innovative technology. But as cherry blossoms drifted onto the makeshift runway, 5 families knew the real miracle wasn't in the braces or the protocols. It was in the way each child instinctively reached for another when they wobbled. How Lucas, once so isolated, now moved confidently between them, adjusting straps and sharing tips like a veteran. And in Maria's hands, still rough from years of scrubbing, now gently guiding a nervous mother's fingers to her daughter's new braces. "Mirala," she whispered, "your girl isn't just walking. She's learning how to fly." The sunset painted the garden in gold as the last guest departed. Lucas lay sprawled on the grass, exhausted, but glowing, his turtle cast, now replaced by a sleek ankle brace that gleamed in the fading light. Maria gathered plates nearby, slipping effortlessly back into her old rhythm despite the designer blazer she wore. William stopped her with a hand on her arm. "You don't have to do that anymore." Maria stacked one more plate. "Habits are hard to break, Mr. Bennett." She nodded toward the house where Miguel was showing Sarah the latest prototype. "And some work is too important to leave behind." As twilight fell, the unlikely family billionaire and housekeeper, doctor and engineer, former patient, and his sister found themselves drawn to the playground. Lucas climbed onto the adaptive swing, his small hands gripping the chains. "Push me higher." Miguel stepped forward, but Maria shook her head. "Let his father do it." William's hands trembled as he grasped the back of the swing. For 5 years, he'd watched other fathers push their sons at the park while Lucas sat wistfully in his wheelchair. Now, as he gave the first gentle push, Lucas's laughter rang out like church bells. Sarah captured the moment on her phone, not for social media or donors, but for the days when progress felt slow. The photo would show more than a boy swinging Miguel's hand on William's shoulder. Maria's fingers laced with Sarah's, and Lucas soaring skyward, his brace catching the last rays of sun like a knight's armor. That night, as Maria locked up the Foundation's new offices, she paused before the mosaic turtle in the lobby. From her pocket, she withdrew the original wooden figure and placed it at the center where its shadow stretched long in the moonlight. Some journeys come full circle only to begin again. Some healers trade mops for medical degrees but keep both close at hand. And some families aren't born, they're built one stubborn, glorious step at a time. The camera flashed freezing in time, a moment Maria would carry forever, Lucas standing tall between his beaming parents, the little girl clutching the turtle carving to her chest, Miguel's arms slung proudly around his mother's shoulders. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah noticed Maria slip away toward the old oak tree where this journey had truly begun. She followed, finding her friend tracing the bark where Lucas's walker had left marks during their first outdoor sessions. "You're thinking of leaving," Sarah said softly. It wasn't a question. Maria smiled, watching the sunset paint the Foundation's glass walls gold. So many children need Tortuga Valiente now, the Bronx, Miami, maybe even my village someday. Sarah swallowed hard. "Take whatever you need, the jet, funding, just—" Her voice broke. "Come home sometimes." A peal of laughter drew their attention. Lucas was teaching the other children how to make confetti angels in the grass, his movements freer than they'd ever been. Maria picked up a fallen oak leaf, its veins branching like neural pathways. "This was never about staying or going, Senora. Only about learning when to hold on." She let the leaf flutter to the ground. "And when to let go." That night, as fireflies dotted the Bennett garden, the families formed an impromptu procession. Children in exoskeletons, parents wheeling strollers, doctors and donors all carrying lanterns shaped like turtles. At the front, Lucas pushed Maria in his old wheelchair, her lap filled with blueprints for new clinics. "Where to Capitan?" she asked. Lucas pointed toward the horizon where the first star twinkled. "Everywhere!" And as the procession moved forward, some walking, some rolling, all moving at their own perfect pace, the wooden turtle passed from hand to small hand, its message growing louder with each transfer. The slowest steps often leave the deepest tracks.